Welcome back. You're still tuned in to Salam Media. It's 10 minutes past 9, and we just had the news by Zai Jedward, Salam Media News. What you need to know when you need to know. Right now, we'll be hopping on to our weekly Jummah Inspirations. We'll be joined by Mufti Humza Farooqi. He's from the Fatwa department at Jamiatu lUlama KZN. Assalamu alaikum, Mufti Muhammad. Jazakallah so much for joining us.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. شكرا for the opportunity once again.
This is our first Juma Inspirations after a very long time, and we're pleased to join you. You can take it away from here.
جزاكم الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم. أما بعد. Most respected listeners, brothers and sisters, we live in a time wherein every person is worried and is in fear of those things that surround him, and he's in fear and worry of his own self and his own iman. There are generally 5 things that a person is most worried and fearful of. One is his iman, one is his physical body, one is his family members, one is his children, and his wealth. These 5 things are such that a person always has something to do with them, has a relationship with them on a daily basis and on a continuous basis. On one occasion, a certain Sahabi radiallahu anhu came to Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and he asked him, and he expressed to him about these 5 things, that I am worried about these things. I have some fear within me about these things. Can you teach me something, or can you guide me in regard to these things, that I can take this fear out of myself and I can, get relief from this worry that has enveloped my mind and that has grieved my heart? How do I take that worry out of myself? So in today's times, when we look at these particular aspects in our life, especially those to do with our health, our bodies, our physical bodies, and those to do with our wealth, we find that many of us and many of the Muslims around the world have opted to sign up for premiums as far as insurance policies are concerned, medical aid plans, etc. are concerned. The permissibility and impermissibility is not what we are talking about. However, what we are talking about is our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in regard to these aspects. We have so much of tawakkul, so much of reliance on these kind of schemes that we sign up for, these premiums that we opt for, and we forget the premiums and the schemes that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam has suggested for us to do. So when we study the ahadith of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, we find that there are certain premiums that we can sign up for in order to save our iman, to save our physical bodies, in order to keep all of these in particular protection. We will find that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has given us certain tasks that we can carry out during the day or at a particular time, once a week, or sometimes from Ramadan to Ramadan. There is a hadith wherein Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentions about salah, that if a person is punctual on his salah, from one salah to the next salah, all of his sins will be forgiven, his iman will be protected. From one Jumu'ah to another Jumu'ah, he adheres and respects and fulfills the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala pertaining to Jumu'ah. Then the entire week he'll be protected, his iman will be protected, his sins will be forgiven, he will meet Allah ta'ala state that he has been forgiven. Ramadan to Ramadan, how do we help ourselves? How do we conduct ourselves in the month of Ramadan? How did the previous Ramadan go for us? Are we amongst those that have been forgiven before the moon was sighted for Eid? So in this way, if we have to put our attention towards these kind of things that we have been taught in the ahadith by Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then we will find that our iman is protected, our health is protected, our wealth is protected, our children are protected, our family members are protected. So when this Sahabi asked Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what should I do in regard to this? What advice do you have in regard to this? Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam told him that he should recite the following dua on a daily basis in the morning and in the evening. Bismillahi ala dini ونفسي وولدي وأهلي ومالي. بسم الله على ديني ونفسي وولدي وأهلي ومالي. So in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a person is putting into protection his iman, his physical body, his family members, his children, and his wealth. Everything is coming under divine insurance and protection from the court of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Another very important dua that many of us may have learned, we may have heard, we may have taught it to our children, but the question is, how many of us are actually practicing on this Mubarak hadith of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? Sayyiduna Aban ibn Uthman rahimahullah, a student of Sayyiduna Uthman ibn Affan radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, the narrator of this hadith, while narrating this hadith, he says that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, whoever recites this dua 3 times in the morning, 3 times in the evening, then for the rest of the day and for the rest of that evening, he will be in the divine protection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And whatever possessions he has, those will be in the protection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So no calamity will befall him. Another narration says that any sort of sudden calamity won't even affect him. So if a person recites this 3 times in the morning, 3 times in the evening, then he will be protected, his wealth will be protected, his iman will be protected. Bismillahi alladhi la yadurru ma'asmihi shay'un fil ardi wa la fis sama' wa huwa as-sami'ul alim. Bismillahi alladhi la yadurru ma'asmihi shay'un fil ardi wa la fis sama' wa huwa as-sami'ul alim. بسم الله الذي لا يضر مع اسمه شيء في الأرض ولا في السماء وهو السميع العليم. In the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, nothing can harm by the name and will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the surface of this earth and in the heavens. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is most hearing and He has knowledge of everything. So a person again here is placing all of his things, his health, his wealth, children, his family members in the protection of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So my respected brothers and elders and sisters and listeners, we learn from these du'as that our reliance and tawakkul should be solely in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first, and thereafter we can take any other step in terms of protecting our health, in terms of protecting our wealth, the security that we may put on our premises, etc. And we should try to focus on adhering to these du'as that we have been taught by Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wasallam. The scholars and commentators of hadith have written that by virtue of a person acting and practicing upon these masnoon and mathur du'as that we are taught in the hadith, a person will find that he will constantly be in the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam has given various virtues with regard to those that are in the constant remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they are not negligent, and they are not aloof of the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So every action we carry out, we know that we are taught certain du'as. When we wake up, when we go to sleep, when we use the bathroom, when we exit the bathroom, when we go to the marketplace, when we come home, we enter the home, we leaving our home, we entering the masjid, leaving the masjid, we eating our food, drinking our water, etc. All these occasions have specific du'as that Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam has taught us. These du'as will bring on, will make us learn and will make us understand that whatever we are doing is with the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that whatever we want to do is always in terms and in line of the Sharia, and it is done on the basis that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the sole helper for our doing certain kind of actions. So let us take this lesson today, that inshallah we will try to recite these du'as that were mentioned. We will try to learn more masnoon du'as, morning and evening du'as. We will bring them into our lives. We will make sure that we recite these du'as in order to be in the divine protection and in order to achieve the divine insurance from the side of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which will never collapse and which will never let you down, and for which you just have to make a simple effort of learning the dua putting it into practice for the rest of your life, and you are in the divine protection and mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Further than that, there are other ahadith wherein if we recite certain du'as like Ayatul Kursi, Muawwadatain, the four Quls, etc., Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will put for us special angels of mercy and angels of protection that will be protecting us throughout the day. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inspire each one of us and grant us the ability to practice upon these advices and to adhere in recitation of these morning and evening du'as with full yaqeen and reliance in the words of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wasallam and in the power of our beloved Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our creator and the one whom we are living our lives for and the one for whom we do every action that we do. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep each one of us in his protection. Ameen ya Rabbal Alameen.
Mashallah, Jazakallah so much. And we really appreciate those words. I think we're going to leave it there. Jazakallah so much for joining us and giving us, those words of inspiration on this beautiful Jummah Friday. Jazakallah so much. And we'll chat to you soon, Sheikh.
Ameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam.